Okay, so we are on to our last module, and that module 7 is on vitamins and bioenergetics. So this module is a relatively smaller module, and I request people to mute themselves, and of course you can please feel free to put in chat. I'm pretty sure Suruchi would be looking at chat, and or you can interrupt me anytime. Okay,
I think the chat is disabled.
chat is disabled. Okay, yeah, I know. In one of the other classes that I teach, which is at school level, the kids do go crazy. Okay, so now I think the chat should be enabled. So please feel free to write whatever you need to write in the chat. Just a review that the final exam is going to be on the first 4 modules and the remaining modules, but they are going to have a different distribution, 30% on the 1 through 4, and 5, 6, 7 are going to be having 70%, about 70% weight. So you must make sure to review all the PowerPoints. And of course, there are also, you can go through all the assignments. For any reason, if any one of you find any quizzes which are you need to access or something is not open, just tell me, if there's no need to even text me individually, just put on group me like this is not accessible or can you put this out. And I'm always worried that everyone should be able to access everything. Okay. Sometimes there are default settings and I just didn't turn on the settings, so that's why it is inaccessible. It's never intentional. Okay, so what we are going to learn is today is about vitamins, and you already know from your other subjects that there are fat soluble and water soluble vitamins, and it's kind of easy to understand that the water soluble ones, which even if they're in excess, it doesn't really matter. They're going to be not really accumulated. The problem is the fat soluble ones. Okay, and for we are also going to discuss the role of various extracellular fluids and a little bit of biochemical energetics. Now, I just wanted to mention that this particular recording will be on your canvas, right where the module 7 is. And also want to mention that if you want to access any of the previous recordings, they are also on the modules. Like for example, module 1 should have a link below it which says video lecture module 1. It should clearly say, and similarly for the rest of the modules. And for any reason, if you do not find something or it's not accessible, please let me know and I'll make sure that you have that module accessible to you. Okay, so what we learned before this week or this past 2 weeks. So in module 6, we were learning about hormones and neurotransmitters. So just a review on what you learned, because we are meeting after a little while. So hormones are small molecules. They can be even proteins that are made in one tissue but are released and act on other tissue. So they are regulatory in nature, and what they do is they regulate body functions, physiology. They control so many different things. And what are neurotransmitters? They are chemical messengers, and they transmit signal from one neuron to a target cell across a synapse. So their functions are a little bit different. And if you can see here, this arrow points out that there are different kinds of neurotransmitters, which are the things that we learned towards the later part of the module. We learned about hormones, and especially in terms of their classification, in terms of their origin. So for example, anterior lobe of pituitary gland, intermediate and posterior lobe. Okay, so vitamins, so they are something that you're quite familiar with. They are not made in human body and must be obtained from external source for the body to function. So there are 13 vitamins and there are 22 minerals. And like I mentioned in the beginning, water soluble and fat soluble. So we are going to start with fat soluble vitamins, and the best way to remember this, the best way to make most of it is to really first, after you read it, like write down things, and that will help you remember some of these things, because you will see that there will be places where they can get confusing. Okay, so their excess is stored in the liver and body fat if it is a fat soluble vitamin. So it is possible to build up an excess or a toxic level of vitamins which are fat solubles. So the easy way to remember it is that the fat soluble vitamins are everything except for B and C. So A, D, E, and K, all of these are fat soluble vitamins. And there is a brief summary given here that vitamin A is for vision, reproduction, bone health, immune system, and skin. Vitamin D, and these are some things you may remember just like that, like how a doctor would say, like, you must take vitamin D along with calcium because calcium is absorbed only when vitamin D is present. So, strengthening the bone and calcium absorption along with the immune system also as well utilizes vitamin D. Then vitamin E is also a part of the immune system building, and then it flushes toxins. And finally, vitamin K for blood clotting as well as bone health. So we're starting with vitamin A, and let's first focus on the right side. I really like to always make sure I look at the structure. So the structure is kind of shown here, and where does it occur? So vitamin A occurs in several chemical formula, and what we have here, I mean, this is a different one. This is an alcoholic, but it can be aldehyde, which is in retina, and as retinol, and alcohol as retinol, and an acid as retinoic acid. So these are the three different forms that exist, and this one is the retinol form, and it was discovered in 1906. Um, and that research indicated that factors other than carbohydrates, proteins, and fats are necessary to keep the cattle healthy, and that's what was the initial starting point of discovery of vitamins. So there is how it is formed, because there is beta carotene which is converted into vitamin A. And what does it do? Like we said, it promotes healthy vision and skin. It helps with the growth and maintenance of bones, teeth, and cell structure. And there are different requirements for males and females, and you'll find that in a lot of vitamins that required, I think, daily average is different in different individuals, of course, and more so you can say between males and females. So what are the food rich in vitamin A? Because we said the name beta carotene, so it is obvious that carotenoids such as anything which is that orangish, yellowish colored food, they are all contain keratin. And vegetables such as, so you can think of all the orange looking vegetables, like there is cantaloupes, carrots, sweet potatoes, and all of these things. They are all you know a part of this carotenoid group. Then there are leafy green vegetables. So all of these are vitamin A rich food. Not only that, there are products which are animal products such as liver, eggs, milk, butter, and cheese, and these are also a part of okay, so these are also a part of the vitamin A rich food family. So beta carotene is the molecule that gives carrots, sweet potatoes, squash, and other their yellow color. And it's the most important molecule because it is the precursor of vitamin A in the human diet. Now, as far as these, as you will proceed, this is the first one. As you would proceed, you will see that um, there is a lot of overlap. Like egg would be, egg rich food. Egg would be, vitamin, not only just vitamin A, but there are others. Similarly, dairy products. So I don't think that would be a focus of my questions, but the focus of my question would be more like structure and function of vitamin A or vitamin B or C or whatever that is. So my goal here is not to confuse you, but to make sure that I am providing you questions which are more where you need to kind of use some thinking here. So, for example, a good question should be in excess of vitamin A, does it cause something? So, of course, you would have to think back and say, hey, vitamin A is a fat soluble vitamin. So, of course, it is going to be, excess is going to be a problem, not water soluble. So, that would be a good question for me. to ask. So it may turn your skin orange, and it can cause fatigue, weakness, severe headache, blurred vision, or hair loss and joint pain. So you may say that, oh my God, no, this is not possible because deficiency causes night blindness, but it can cause problems in excess form as well. And it can also cause severe liver or brain damage. It can
I
also, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, there's a question on the chat that says if they need to memorize chemical structures.
If they need to know, not at all. You don't need to memorize chemical structure or even the RDA. I don't think um, that is something that I would ask you. I want to tell you the focus of my questions is always something that I expect you to remember. Like, for example, 1 week after exam, it would be unfair for me to expect that you remember RDA for every single vitamin, and you don't even need that. But if you are in out there in the field as a dental hygienist or as a allied health, in the nursing or whatever you're doing, I think it would be important for you to recognize some features. Like, for example, if you see a person is having issues with eye, like, and someone says, mentions vitamin, then, that could be something that should strike your mind that, okay, out of all the vitamins I know vitamin A is involved in vision. So, just those questions where the focus is understanding the body and the functions. So vitamin D is this called the sunshine vitamin, and it is a unique among the vitamins in that it is a part of a hormone. So it's part vitamin, part hormone. So it sounds a little bit complicated, but it is something that is essential for building and maintaining bones. So you can think of it as something that will help in utilizing calcium uptake, as well as making sure that the bones and teeth is being maintained. And if you would know that, you probably know that people who live in US, and remember, like in winter months, we never go out almost. So we are like severely low in vitamin D. I'm not even sure how many of you have got yourself tested for vitamin D. Have you ever got tested for different vitamins? Any one of you?
Only when I was pregnant, I think.
Oh, okay. Was it normal or not?
I think it was normal, and we've been
Okay.
doing a lot of outdoor stuff, so it wasn't that bad.
Yeah, and like today is raining and tomorrow is gonna rain, and then after that it's going to hit 30s. So good luck with
Yeah.
going out. Yeah, but
Yeah.
so yes, I'm telling you, like I got tested once, and I was like, so low in vitamin. I was definitely low in vitamin D. So, to the extent that like they said, you should take like really, really the boosters of like the big doses, and then narrow it down. So, it is important, and it can also help decrease certain cancers. So important to maintain those levels. So what is the daily dose? Daily average 5 micrograms until the age of 50, and then 10 micrograms after that, and maybe later is 15. So that is what the thing is. So this they did tell me like I need 10 micrograms per day, but they said you should take 50 in the beginning because you're like really low on that. So vitamin D structures. So vitamin D2 and D3, these are the two structures that you kind of see here, and it is showing exactly where the differences are, and the rest of the structure is similar. So of course they are the same family, and there are main two dietary forms. Like these are the two main dietary forms, and this D2 is made by plants and yeast, and this is made by animals. That's the difference. And it is not something, again, the natural form is the best, where you are, it's something that's made while you are under the sun and constantly gets made. So how does this happen? So when you have sun exposure for 10 minutes, then under the skin there is a molecule, which is, of course, that the membranes contain the cholesterol like molecules, 7 dehydrocholesterol, and that is converted to vitamin D3. That's one good way of getting the vitamin. Another way of getting the vitamin is by fish meat and other supplements. So, which may be something that some people might do more than others. Once it is acquired and it is transferred to liver, it is, this particular vitamin is converted to hydroxy vitamin D3, and then this is helps in maintaining calcium balance in the body. So it is extremely important that we get our daily dose of vitamin D. Also, I was looking at, I mean, for milk, they say like if you are not relying on meat products, like you really, really, it's kind of crazy. It says like you should drink 4 glasses of milk, like for making sure, or equivalent amounts of yogurts and everything to get the right amount of calcium and vitamin D, which is a lot. Like you're not drinking 4 glasses of milk every day, I'm pretty sure. Then there is tuna, salmon, some of these things, and so this is there is another way of just showing here that actually it kind of starts from here. So let me check here. Okay, so it's kind of the same thing, just showing it, and this is more like a detailed version. Sunlight giving rise to the vitamin D3. Excess of vitamin D is bad because it can cause hypercalcemia without any toxicity symptoms, or can have toxicity symptoms without hypercalcemia. So it is kind of a difficult situation. I do really feel that this is not that common, having high dose of vitamin D, because it is something that would be like someone is taking high dose, and so it is not like getting excreted. But naturally, if you're not taking any supplements, that's not something that really would happen. It can also cause vitamin D toxicity, can also cause hypervitaminosis D, or excess of calcium or phosphate. So these are the different things, but the deficiency is what we are more concerned with at this time, because that's very commonly happening. If you do not have the right kind of diet, or if you are lactose intolerant, so of course you cannot take any milk, so and then body is unable to absorb vitamin D. uh, and like I said, very, very, very common in the northern hemisphere, limited exposure to sunlight, and this may lead to osteoporosis like disease. So you can see the normal bone and osteoporosis, and you can see that it's not really maintaining the right amount of uh, density, and the calcium absorption is really hampered. So I'm not sure if you've heard about this, but there is this place in Arctic Circle. There is a village, and about 10 days ago, like they got their last sunlight, and so they don't have any sunlight for 2 months. They do have like a dusk or dawn, like it feels like it's going to be morning, but actually it never happens. Like the sun never comes. So you can imagine, like those people definitely, regionally, those people might need to have more vitamin D, and people who live near equator or better climates, they need to have, naturally they're not going to be deficient. So the next one is vitamin E, and this one is important for RBCs, muscles, and other tissue. It acts as a blood thinner, and also as an important role as an antioxidant. It helps to protect the cell membrane from damage, and particularly the membranes of the nerves. It is helpful in combating heart disease, cancers, promoting skin health, and all of that. So it's a group of 8 fat-soluble compounds that include 4 tocopherols. This is the and there are 4 tocotrienols. So you don't need to know the structure. This is just like one of the structures in here for vitamin E, and that's how it looks like. You do not, I would never ask you show this and say, is this vitamin A or E or K? Like that's kind of tricky. um, Recommended daily amount is 15 milligrams per day, and deficiency as well as toxicity is quite rare. Where do you get it from? You get it from uh, food which are like more like there is vegetable oil, the salad dressings, whole grain cereals, all of these. So you can see there is a bunch of things that are shown, and you will realize by the end of this particular module how important it is to eat nuts and things like avocados and salmon and all that. That's really something that can contain all of these vitamins. Vitamin K is important for blood clotting, but also has an important role in bone health, and it is made mostly in intestines. Let me see. I just want to make sure that we are not really covering. Okay. So these are all the different foods. So you can see a lot of leafy greens and meats would have this. So as long as, in nutshell, like as long as you're having these healthy, like lots of veggies and you know, protein sources, you're also covering for vitamins. And of course, if you are eating meat, your meat contains vitamins because the animals need to have vitamins too, and so that's something that will readily come to you. And then there is strawberries and eggs. So this may vary, but you can see the same things coming back again and again. For example, this doesn't have milk, but others have. So no really excess and deficiency things in here. I hope wait a minute, let me check. Is it a, is this the same PowerPoint that I have in there? Having some doubts now. Let me, give me 1 second. Let me quickly check what I shared in module 7. Sometimes I have multiple versions. Sorry about that. Let's see. Isn't this material presented in this module is something that you have learned here and there?
Yeah, you hear about it.
Okay. I think that was that was a little bit abbreviated version. Okay. I'm going to take you back to a different PDF, which will help us much better. Okay. So I'm just going back to the same place where we were. We were at vitamin K. The only thing is that it is a PDF, so it kind of looks a little bit different. But nevertheless, we are doing the exact same thing. So these are the different sources, and that's where we were that's what we were doing. Now we are going to look at, because there are not really many effects of many noted deficiencies or noted, you know, excess. We are going to now move to the second set of vitamins, which is the water soluble vitamins. So in a way it is easy to remember because just all the B's and C's, but you have to remember that when you're talking about the B's, there is no B4 and there is no B8 or 10. So it's B1, B2, B3, B5, B6, B7, B9, and B12, and they have all these different names. Now, I think the first thing when we see this, and you know, you might ask me, like, do I need to remember that vitamin B5 is pantothenic acid? I would say yes, that is actually something that is heavily used even in any of these biology or different health fields, where you would be like, when someone says biotin, you should be able to recognize that as B7. So this is something I would write out separately and keep it, and then think of the ways, you know, to remember it. I remember the way I remembered was I remembered these and I remembered these, and I would be like just trying to match them together because I know thiamine is B1, riboflavin is B2. So I would just remember these, especially kind of easy to remember till here, pantothenic acid, because 5 is for pant. So that's how I would remember that. And then the rest of it, remember separately: pyridoxine, biotin, folate, and cobalamin. So, so these are the water soluble vitamins. And if you see, I'll try to cover in each of these PowerPoints. So vitamin B1, also known as thiamine, is manufactured. I mean, it's found in food, and you can also take it as a dietary supplement. And its role is that it is a cofactor for several enzymatic reactions, which are especially involved in glucose and energy metabolism. And then these are the food sources that are shown here. I'm not going to stress too much on the food source because, like I said, the more you go, you will realize that it will keep showing up the same kind of, you know, food sources. So deficiency of vitamin B1, what can it cause? It is most commonly seen with um, alcohol use disorder. It can manifest as beriberi, or it can also manifest as uh, encephalopathy or Korsakoff syndrome. So these are all different things, and you don't need to know you don't really need to know a lot of details in that. The cure is that you can have the supplements, and it can also be used to treat other diseases. So you just need to know you don't need to know even what the structure looks like because not being asked, but what is its role, what is its function, like I said before. If there is any deficiency, what is the deficiency or what is the excess would cause.
Could you talk a little bit about grain processing? There's
Oh,
a question
yes.
about that. So can you just elaborate?
Are you talking about the assignment question?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I will definitely come to that. I'll remember that and come to that. Okay. So vitamin B2. Okay, so vitamin B2 or riboflavin. It is again a water soluble vitamin and it regulates functions of hormones and carbohydrate metabolism. So you can see that it is doing something kind of similar. It helps in stimulation of optic nerve and acts as a central component for the FAD and FMN, which we have not studied, but they are very popular biochemistry molecule. And it is required for different enzymatic reactions as well. So these are the food sources. This is what the structure looks like. What does this deficiency cause? It includes different kinds of things, including you can. I haven't put all of these because the reason I didn't describe all of these diseases is because then it would become more about diseases rather than less about vitamins. So it can also cause a certain kind of anemia because it interferes with the uptake of iron. And the deficiency usually is caused by insufficient dietary intake. Vitamin B3, so like I said, no B4, niacin, and it can occur in three different forms. So now that is something important to know. How does it occur? Not the structure, but how is it present? And all three forms are converted to NAD. And you all know, you might have heard or seen, or if you don't know, nicotine adenine dinucleotide, it is very much required for human for different functions in human. So what are the food sources? So there is vitamin B3 is highly absorbed from all of these different kinds of food sources, and the deficiency can cause pellagra, and it is something that is found in alcoholics. The symptoms including vomiting, loss of appetite, and abdominal pain. Vitamin B5. It is called pantothenic acid, and all animals require this to synthesize CoA. All of these vitamins, even though they are needed for something really, really small, but that's just so important in functions, such as because this one is important metabolism of proteins and even synthesis of proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. So these are the food sources which are shown. Again, egg is really important. Then there is green leafy vegetables and all of those things besides the meat. So not everything you can get from meat. Of course, a lot you can get, but this is something that you need to have. So this deficiency is very rare. So thankfully, we don't have to remember anything about B5. And then comes B6. So vitamin B6 or PLP or pyridoxal 5 phosphate is, the role of this particular one is to serve as a coenzyme in a lot of reactions. So, I mean, if it's not present, then you can imagine that a lot of reactions will suffer from a loss of that coenzyme, and it is, God knows what effect. It can have, it can, depending on how much deficient you are, it can have some, but it is needed in very, very small amounts. So deficiency is very rare. So these are the food sources. That is the structure that is shown. What does it cause? With deficiency as well as excess is quite rare. And the elderly and alcoholics have an increased risk of deficiency, and so it can be supplemented. It can exist as in women, especially with type 1 diabetes and patients with some inflammation and liver diseases, which is consistent with alcoholics. Those are the people that can have some kind of decreased levels. B7, biotin, water soluble, is very important again for metabolism of fats and proteins and including cell growth and all of those things. So I think in this one, try to remember things which like really, really strike out. Like everything is important in metabolism and you can always write that. But like for example, it's recommended as a dietary supplement for strengthening hair and nails, So that's kind of unique role. So remember the unique ones. That's where you can score well. Okay, so deficiency occurs from the absence of vitamin in the diet, particularly in breastfeeding mothers, and daily consumption of raw egg whites for several months may result in biotin deficiency. I don't know who consumes raw egg whites, but that's what it does. And then deficiency symptoms include brittle and thin fingernails, hair loss, conjunctivitis, dermatitis, and other neurological symptoms. These are the food sources. So like I said, no B4, B8, or B10. So B9, folate. It is required for body to make DNA and RNA and metabolize amino acids for cell division. These are the different food sources. And not consuming it can lead to folate deficiency and result in anemia, where the cells become abnormally large. Now, this is a unique feature of vitamin B9. And you can feel, just like in anemia, a person can feel tired or shortness of breath, open sores in the tongue, and all of those things, change in color of the skin. That's also common in anemia. So all of those things can be experienced with B9. So B9, really, really important because, you're not able to really sustain making the right kind of, the red blood cell. B12, which is the last one in B, is the cobalamin and function in DNA synthesis as well as in fatty acid metabolism. These are the different sources. Again, it is all the meats, and in this one they're not really any green leafy vegetables. So yes, eggs are a good source and cheeses. So I'm just pointing out the unique ones for you. And deficiency can cause some irreparable damage, especially in the brain and nervous system. So this can also cause anemia. This anemia is specific. It's called pernicious anemia, and it's a little bit different because there is not exactly showing the features of iron deficiency, and this is just because the DNA was not synthesized, and hence anemia in the bone marrow. It's kind of hard to make the red blood cells. Finally, and I think the last one is vitamin C or ascorbic acid. We all know that anything which is kind of like the tangy taste would have vitamin C. It's required in repair of tissue. It is definitely required in immune system. If you know people who say, take these immune boosters during the flu season, vitamin C is very important in maintaining that immunity, just like vitamin D. And it's a cofactor for many different reactions. What it leads to if there is deficiency is scurvy. And what happens is that in this particular disease is that the body is not able to make this particular vitamin. And so it can cause, it can cause many different kinds of effects as a result of that. For example, it's, and of course, the excess doesn't really, in this case, the excess doesn't really matter because it is water soluble. So any of the water soluble one are the ones that would be, the excess would never be a situation. So in this case, if there is scurvy, then people have typically bleeding gums, and they have, their healed wounds can reopen. And it's almost like, you're like kind of poorly nourished. So that's what happens in vitamin C deficiency. So then there are minerals, and I didn't go too much into details. There is calcium, chloride, magnesium, phosphorus, potassium, sodium, and sulfur. These are the major ones that are needed, and these are the traces. Now you may ask, am I expected to remember? I think this one is really, really important. It's not like I'm going to nitpick and ask you stuff like purposely ask you, is molybdenum required in traces or major? But at least you should know overall. Like, yes, I know, like, okay, calcium is always needed. We have heard in bones, in chloride, magnesium. So you should know that what are the major ones, at least you should know. And we should also know that iron is not a major one. Iodine, iron, which are thought to be really super important, which they are, but they're not the major ones. They're required in traces. So what should you remember in this? You should remember the major minerals in this.
This make me push so something.
Say that again. Okay. Body fluids. So the total amount of body fluids in human is approximately 70%, and it is divided in two parts: the intracellular fluid, which is inside the cells, and extracellular fluid, which is outside the cells. So I showed for you here what happens in a typical male versus female, in terms of like the extracellular, the amount of the body fluids. Okay, so if we see here, so just to make it clear that anything which is inside the cell is the intracellular as expected, and outside the cell is 45%. The extracellular fluid includes there is it is present in it is present in three different, basically two major parts, and then there are other things. That's what is shown here. And this is you can clearly see here what do we mean exactly by interstitial, which is between the cells and the extracellular part. That is what the interstitial is, and which helps in the exchange of water and electrolyte between the cells and the plasma. And what is plasma? Plasma is in the blood. So interstitial is neither in cell, it's not in the blood, it is in between, helping in that exchange. So what are the barriers that separate ICF, interstitial fluid, and plasma? So if you see here, that it's important to know, and that what will help us really understand here is that if you, let's start from the bottom of this figure. It's just interstitial fluid is whatever is inside the cell, this yellow part, and then there is a plasma membrane, and then comes the interstitial fluid. So don't get confused between intracellular and interstitial, because intracellular is in the cell, and that's what the intracellular fluid is. Then there is the in-between one. Then there is a blood vessel wall, and you know how there are different arteries, and they would go throughout the body. Sorry, the blood vessels will go throughout the body. So this blood vessels are shown here, and they are the ones that would be accounting for the plasma. And we can separate the blood cells from the plasma, so that's the other kind of, or the extracellular fluid that we're talking about. So the composition of body fluid, there are some organic things and some inorganic things, and these are mostly the ones, many of them are the ones that are major minerals present. Just for your perspective, now that you have understood that extracellular is outside the cell and intracellular is inside, most abundant cation here is sodium, and this one is potassium. The most abundant cation, sodium, helps in muscle contraction, impulse transmission, and fluid electrolyte balance. And the most abundant anion is chloride, which regulates osmotic pressure and forms hydrochloric acid, and that is the gastric acid. In the intracellular fluid, which is the inside the cell, most abundant is potassium. So of course you can see here the interplay of minerals. These minerals which we mentioned, they actually play an important role in the cell. So to recognize that the chemicals play, the elements play important role, is something that is essentially an important part of the course. Just bringing that chemistry and biology together again. So the sodium and potassium pumps, they play a major role in keeping sodium potassium high inside and sodium high outside the cell. Is this important? Definitely this is important, because this is something you need to know. You will be using it extensively in your fields. Sodium is most abundant in ECF. We just discussing similar what we just discussed in a different format. It's the 90% of extracellular cations and plays pivotal role in fluid and electrolyte balance. Whereas the chloride, in contrast, is the most prevalent anion. So of course, I think you know cation is the positive one, anion is the negative one, and it easily moves between ECF and ICF because it's something that can be transported across using the transporters. The second most prevalent extracellular one is bicarbonate, and this is present because the as long as there is carbon dioxide, you can see that always the bicarbonate or bicarbonic acid is getting lead. So it is something that can be picked up, and it can be helping in the chloride shift helps maintain this balance. Talked about this one. Like I said, we're just discussing in a different format, just listing all of these important features of each of these elements. It's abundant in ICF, and it helps in maintaining the membrane potentials in neurons and muscle fibers, and also maintains normal ICF fluid. Similarly, magnesium is present in ICF mostly, just like potassium, and it's the second most common cation. And it is definitely needed for even maintaining the sodium potassium pump. So there is, like I said, there is a pump which keeps the sodium high outside and potassium high inside. What are the specialized fluids of the body? Just like very, very briefly, there is lymph, milk, CSF or cerebrospinal fluid, amniotic fluid, aqueous humor, sweat, and tears. And in the following slides, very briefly, they've been described. Like, the lymph is, it contains, of course, it contains the, even though it is clear and colorless, it does contain some proteins, a little bit of lipids, and some carbohydrates. Okay, mostly glucose. What is the function of this? Just return. So this part, I would not ask you the composition of lymph. I would just ask you what is the main functions of lymph? Like what is its role in the human body? So return protein from tissue spaces into the blood, redistribution of fluid. It's just kind of acts as a whole balancing act being done by the lymph. Removal of bacterial toxin and other foreign things, maintaining structural and functional integrity, and help in fat absorption. All of these are the roles that the lymph plays in the human body. Now, milk, you know what it does. So we know that it's primarily, of course, it's a fluid, but it does contain some lipids and proteins. Of course, milk always contains proteins. Also contains some minerals and vitamins. More importantly, what is its function? Is that it provides galactose for the infant to grow. It gets metabolized to lactic acid and eliminates harmful bacteria, and it's a source of proteins, essential proteins, minerals, and vitamins for the baby. CSF, you know where the cerebrospinal fluid is. It's something which is, as the name suggests, that it is formed in the cavities of the brain. It's like around the spinal cord. That is why it is connected to the word cerebral and then spinal. It's the making the CSF. 500 ml of CSF is formed every day, and at any given time there is this much amount of CSF. So it is completely replaced 3 times in a day. And what does it actually do? It influences a lot of different things. It's a hydraulic shock absorber, of course, because the nervous system is like so, has to be always kept so intact. So it creates that, shouldn't be damaged in any way. Regulation of intracranial pressure, influences hunger, sensation, and eating behavior. Amniotic fluid, you know that it is present in to protect the fetus basically, and it is I mean, it is present in the placenta. It is it is something that is also used for testing, for carrying out certain tests. It is it contains the fetal cell and also contains lipids. So it is the medium, it is the way where all the nutrients and everything is exchanged, and including even chemical messages and signals. Aqueous humor is in the chamber of the eye and it is secreted by ciliary body. What it does is um, it maintains a certain pressure in the eye, and it is making sure, again, one of the major functions of the fluid is to protect the eye. Sweat, we all know the functions of the sweat, but it is secretion of a, su- of a of basically fluids by our body, by the sweat gland, and it regulates the temperature for us, because if we're too hot then we sweat and becomes cold. And it is uh, controlled by a steroid, because it is directly linked to the amount of electrolyte present. Tears also, just like aqueous humor, present in the eye. It is produced specifically by lacrimal glands. It also protects the eye. So like I said, one of the function of most of the fluids is to make sure it is protecting and creating that kind of buffer effect. It also keeps the surface of cornea lubricated. If it dries, the cornea would be dysfunctional. The last part of this particular course, we're going to just have like 5 slides and be done. What is bioenergetics? Bioenergetics is the energy transfer within the living thing. So if you are thinking about, when you are thinking about body, any kind of body, human body, animal body, there is energy being generated, there is energy being utilized, and the energy is needed in certain places. So the study of that overall, where the energy is getting made, transferred, utilized, that entire study is the study of bioenergetics. And when you are studying metabolism, it needs energy in the form of ATP, in the form of other molecules, and you can study it again by using bioenergetics. So you can study anything about energy and life using this. So there are 2 laws of bioenergetics, and I'm going to start with the first law. You might recall this, reading this somewhere. Energy can neither be created or destroyed, but can be changed from one form to another. And really love learning this in the last part, because it just makes so much sense. For example, when we're looking at something, we're looking at a light, but it's transferred as a chemical and then an electrical input, and it converts to a vision. So you are seeing energy in one form, it gets converted to another form, or it's activated by one form. Similarly, in muscle contraction, similarly in you can see there is change of state too. So this is the first law. It's not created or destroyed, just changing forms. And energy transfer, the second one, is also something very easy to remember. Energy transfer will always proceed in the direction of increased entropy and release of free energy. So for example, you clean the house in the morning, okay? When you leave and you come back, do you find the house cleaner or dirtier? I mean, the answer is obviously like it's way more dirty, because the kids are messing up, running around, doing things. So energy always proceeds in the direction of increased disorderliness or increased entropy. So you start with a state of more orderliness, you end up with disorderliness. So it makes it more random and releases free energy. So these are the 2 laws. One is it cannot be destroyed or created. The other is it is always proceeding in the direction of increased randomness. So these are some examples I discussed with you, like eyesight, light is converted to electrical impulse, muscle contraction, vitamin D formation, we know photosynthesis. These are all just different conversions. These are things you've been already seeing. The word bioenergetics may be new, but none of these things will be new to you. These are some things that you have already learned. And just the bioenergetics will help you in giving these solid terms like light energy to chemical energy, an example of bioenergetics, of course, but not something that you might have used earlier as a term. And I was mentioning in one of the slides, the most important thing in bioenergetics is the energy carrier molecule, which is ATP or adenosine triphosphate. If you look at the molecule of DNA, there is adenine, there is sugar here, and there is the phosphate. The only difference is this is triphosphate, so there are 3 phosphate groups. And so it can be converted, ATP can be made from aerobic and anaerobic process. Bioenergetics is a huge topic. We are not going to be learning more than this. We are just going to focus on that conversion of energy and the 2 laws of bioenergetics and what is most important molecule in bioenergetics, which is the ATP molecule. So that's pretty much it. And I just want to make sure that we end with like a with the cartoon. Yes, so we are. This is the end of the entire course. I would like to stop the recording now.